for the reading of the Gospel. From Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 to 13, in the New Revised Standard Version Updated Edition, we read, "Then the kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 young women took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a shout, 'Look, here is the bridegroom. Come out and meet him.' Then all those young women got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, 'Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out.' But the wise replied, 'No, there will not be enough for you and for us. You had better go to the dealers and buy some for yourselves.' And while they went to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went with him into the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later the other young women came also, saying, 'Lord, Lord, open to us.' But he replied, 'Truly I tell you, I do not know you. Keep awake, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour.'" Please be seated for a moment of silence.
Live in charity and steadfast love. Live in charity, God will dwell with you. Live in charity and steadfast love. Live in charity, God will dwell with you.
So, as I heard one preacher say recently, if you are one of the 5 foolish young women in this passage, this parable sounds like a really bad anxiety dream, right? The kind of nightmare that you wake up from in a panic. So let's imagine it this way. Let's say you are an aspiring actor. You have been waiting for your big break, and you've been waiting a really long time. You're on your way home from filming yet another B-rate commercial. You're waiting at the airport for a delayed flight, but you get a call from your agent saying that director and producer Steven Spielberg is interested in casting you in his next film. He's supposed to call you in the next couple of hours, so stay by your phone, your agent says. "Got it," you say. So you turn up the volume on your phone to make sure you don't miss the call. You wait for so long that you fall asleep at the terminal, but you wake up to the brrrr of your text message going off from your agent saying, "Get ready, I just talked to his assistant, he's calling soon." "Awesome," you text back, "I'm ready." But as you swipe up from the text, you notice the dreaded red battery symbol in the corner of your phone. You've got less than 10% power left. You reach into your bag for your charger, but you realize you left your charger in your hotel room. No, right? So you frantically start looking around for people who have chargers, and everybody you go to, you have an iPhone, right? They all have Androids. But finally, you find some people with an iPhone, but all these people, they either ignore you or they just say, sorry, I need my charger, my flight's leaving soon. Someone finally looks at you with sympathy and says, I think I saw a store in the terminal that sells chargers. Right, of course, you say. So off you go. You check your battery, you're down to 7% now. You're racing against the clock. You find the airport directory, locate an electronics store, and you do that awkward speed walk thing through the airport where your bags are hitting up against you. You hustle all the way to the equivalent of the airport Radio Shack. And after frantically looking around at everything in the store, you realize that they're sold out of the charger you need. They have the iPhone 10.3.24.76 charger, and you need the 10.3.2479 model. Of course, leave it to Apple to always be making you buy new chargers. The guy behind the counter says, sorry, he's going on break, he can't help you, but there is an electronics vending machine kiosk thing between the women's restroom and McDonald's. And so you run there, you get to one of those vending machines. You've seen these, haven't you, that have electronics in them. And they have what you need. You look at your phone, though, 4%. So you put in your credit card, you push A12, and the little metal thing starts to turn for your charger to come out, and it's jammed. The charger is stuck in the turnstile. Now this is when the dream really becomes a nightmare, right? The only thing that would make it worse is if you were naked, or if your teeth were falling out, or one of those other horrible recurring things that happens in dreams. The charger is completely stuck. You look around for help. People are just whizzing by you on their phones, of course, like rubbing salt in a wound. You see a number on the corner of the machine for customer service, and you call it. Of course, they put you on hold, precious battery power depleted by the second, and your phone goes black. It's dead. Frustrated, you kick the machine, and you turn your back, and you sink to the ground, but then you hear a thud. You turn and look. It's a miracle. The charger was dislodged by your frustrated kick against the machine. Thanks be to God, you grab your charger, you try to tear it out of that awful plastic clamshell thing that all electronics are in. You have to have scissors to get it out, but of course you're in an airport where you don't have scissors because you had to go through security. But somehow you get the thing out, you plug it in, and you wait. It finally gets enough juice to turn on. And when you know it, you see that you have a missed call. It's a missed call from a number you don't recognize. So you immediately call the number back. Steven Spielberg here. You begin to explain the situation, but before you even get to the apology, he says, I'm sorry, who are you? You must have the wrong number. Click. You try to redial the number again, but you get that beep-dee-dee. I'm sorry, this number is no longer in service. What? I mean, the nightmare just keeps getting worse, right? You keep frantically dialing until you wake up from your nightmare panic dream in a nervous sweat. Your future has flashed before you, the opportunity of a lifetime gone. You're going to be playing extras in commercials that run in the middle of the night between infomercials for the rest of your life. So yeah, stay alert, people. The kingdom of God is like that. What? I mean, I know my example was a little dramatic, but come on, right? Where is the good news in this story? What kind of faith do we follow that leaves us plumb out of luck just because we forgot to bring a little extra oil or because we left our cell phone chargers in the hotel? If anything, these young women are the ones who need to catch a break, not have a door slammed in their face. Lord have mercy. Now you see, the ancient Jewish wedding custom was that a groom and his attendants would come to the home of the bride's parents and take the bride along with her attendants in a bridal procession back to his parents' home where the wedding celebration would begin. Of course, as you heard in our story today, the groom is late. Very late, in fact. So late that all 10 of the bridesmaids have fallen asleep. And finally, in the middle of the night, he shows up. So it's that time when the bridesmaids are supposed to trim their lamps, right? And go out and meet him. 5 of them have the extra oil they need, the other 5 don't. And so the so-called wise bridesmaids who have extra oil refuse to share with the 5 who are in need, and they say, just go out to some dealers and find some oil. It's midnight, mind you, 2,000 plus years ago. There are no 24-hour gas stations or 7-Elevens back then. Good luck finding anything open. Nevertheless, the foolish women listen to them, and they go in search of oil. But of course, they miss the groom's arrival, and by the time they catch up to the party, the door is shut. The groom won't let them in. Lord, Lord, open to us, they say. It's like those commercials with the people at the door trying to get it to open. And the groom says, sorry, I don't know you. Actually, wait, he doesn't even say sorry. He just says, truly I tell you, I don't know you. Ouch. Jesus finishes the parable by saying, keep awake, which doesn't even make sense because all 10 of the women fell asleep. And to be honest, the groom was the one who was late. He's the one who caused these women to get so tired. So why are they taking the hit for his tardiness? That's a whole other sermon. I'll leave that one for today. But on the surface, this is all just yet another really odd, disturbing parable, isn't it? As Lutheran pastor Reverend Nadia Bowles-Weber rightly asks, what exactly are we supposed to take from this parable? That we should not rely on others? That we should not give to those who ask of us? Is Jesus just suddenly taking back everything he's taught us so far about generosity and self-giving, and instead showing us a parable about how we should be stingy and self-reliant? Isn't this Jesus the same guy who just chapters earlier in Matthew's gospel said stuff like, give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse from anyone who wants to borrow? Therefore, I tell you, don't worry about your life, what you'll eat, or what you drink, or what you wear, or how much oil is in your lamp, right? Knock, and the door will be opened to you. In everything, do unto others as you would have them do to you. If you want to be perfect, go, sell your possessions, give to those in need. Many who are first will be last, and the last will be first. And the best one yet, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites, you shut the kingdom of heaven in men's faces. Are we to interpret this parable in a way that just flies in the face of everything Jesus has taught us so far? Surely not, right? If we're reading it this way, that Jesus is the bridegroom who shuts the door in our faces because we forgot to bring some extra oil, then we're reading it too simply, or we're simply missing the point. Now, truth be told, you can take a very fine lesson from this parable that says, keep your lamps trimmed and burning, right? Always be prepared, because you never know when Jesus is coming. And after all, the last word in this verse, the one that reads awake for us, in the Greek is more like be watchful, be alert, give attention to. And there's nothing wrong with the moral of this story to be, be prepared. That's not a bad thing. But parables are about truths much deeper than advice you could get from the Boy Scout motto, right? And nothing against Boy Scouts, I love to be prepared myself. On a hike, I'm the first one to have extra water and snacks, first aid kit, extra clothes, wet ones, tissues, medicines, whatever you need, I've got it in my 50-pound backpack. I love to be prepared. But in a day where the second coming of Jesus feels far off to us, is be prepared really the courageous kingdom message that we need today, right now in this moment, for our lives? Is there perhaps a different message here for us? Maybe we can read it in a different way. After all, Jesus was literally having the door shut in his face during his time, both by the temple authorities and by Rome, who was about to crucify him. So he, of all people, would feel like the door being shut in your face is unfair. What if this parable has a warning for us about community and who we listen to, more so than a warning about how prepared we are? We're allowed to play around with the meaning of the parables. They're designed that way, so let's do it. Today, let's just imagine that the lamps are a metaphor for faith. If that is true, then at any given point in a community, some of us have lights that are shining brightly, and some of us have lights that are barely flickering. Times of suffering, of deep doubt and questioning, times of loneliness and depression, times where we feel like we have lost our way and don't know what next step to take. These are all times where we might feel like the women in the story who have run out of oil for their lamps. They had a lamp, and it had oil in it, but they just kept burning and burning and burning, and they don't have any reserves left. And it has nothing to do with how prepared they were or weren't. Remember, we're not told why the so-called foolish did not have extra oil. Maybe they didn't have extra oil to bring. Maybe they did, but they thought somebody else in their family might need it. Maybe they just trusted that the bridegroom would arrive on time. We don't know why some women had extra oil and others didn't. But maybe that's not the point. That's kind of like how we ask ourselves, why is it in life that it feels like some people, maybe even myself, that I'm facing challenges and burdens all the time, one thing after another? Why is my life like this? And then when I look at other people's lives, it seems like they're doing okay, right? It's a similar kind of question. We try to compare our sufferings, compare our reserves. But these are things we really can't explain or change, right? The question is, what do we do with it? Well, if we're a community, then we're a community. And that means that we do this thing called faith together. Let's just imagine that Jesus is the bridegroom in this parable. If that's the case, it makes perfect sense to me that where there is a group of people waiting to meet Jesus, there's going to be a mix of resources and reserves, right? Some of us have all we need and more. Others of us are barely hanging on. What would have happened if the women with the lamps whose oil was running out just decided to stay put and not go get more oil? Think about it. The groom never asks them to make sure their lamps are bright when they greet him. Couldn't the 5 women with barely flickering lights have just stuck really close to their friends who had bright lights? Couldn't they have shared a lantern and walked 2 by 2? What made them so afraid or ashamed of their scarcity that they risked missing the groom by leaving the scene? And also think about this. If the groom is coming in the middle of the night, how is he walking in the dark, right? Clearly he has a light or a lantern of his own. I'm sure a whole entourage. And truly, if we're reading Jesus as the bridegroom in this story, isn't Jesus the light of the world? The one who illumines our lives whenever he arrives. At the end times or in our times, won't his light be enough to light up the sky? As it says in Revelation, in the city of God, they will not need the light of a lamp, for the Lord your God will give you light. This is our faith, right? That Christ is our light. You see, the women, I think, whose lamps are burning dimly, they may have been foolish in this parable, but not because they didn't have enough oil or because they fell asleep. I wonder if it's because they listened to the voices of these other people who told them that what they had wasn't enough. That they had to go out and search and find more oil in order to be ready to meet the groom. They believed the lie that they couldn't meet Jesus with their lack or their need. They believed these external voices that said, you don't have enough, you need more. Rather than trusting the voice of God that has been saying all along, it's okay. It's not about what you have or don't have. It's about being close to me, your God, your creator. So what if these women had said, no, we're not going to get oil. We're just fine as we are. Even in the dark, we're okay. Jesus will find us, and we're just going to stick close to you guys until he comes. This is actually a harder message for many of us than we'd like to admit. To believe truly that we are enough. That what we have right now as individuals, as a church, is enough. To trust in a theology of abundance and belovedness. To trust that Jesus will greet us and meet us always just as we are, whether we're shining brightly or barely flickering in our faith. Whether we have enough energy to run out and greet him or are barely moving or stuck in a rut. The world wants to fool us into thinking that in order to be prepared in life, we have to have it all together and be bright and shiny and glowing all the time. But that's just not life. Nor is it what God asks of us. As much or more than being prepared, God asks for our presence to draw near. I think the key to this parable is in the unnamed voice that shouts out at midnight. Did you catch what that voice says? Look, here is the bridegroom. Come out to meet him. This is an invitation, my friends, and a warm one, an excited one. There are no qualifications like make sure your lamp is trimmed and burning. No, the voice just says, look, come, meet. Look, come, meet. That is our invitation from God. And even more, God is always welcome to meet us in our need. In fact, you might even say that in this parable, the reason the bridegroom says, I don't know you, when these women come and knock on the door is because Jesus knows us not by our independence from him or our self-reliance. Jesus knows us by our need of him, our need for him, for God, for others. which we should never be ashamed about. It's at the heart of our faith, right? That we need God and we need one another. If you're here today and you feel like you have nothing to give, like your lamp is flickering out, like you have no gas in your tank, if you're sitting here today feeling like you've got to go out and get something or do something else in your life to have it all together or to be acceptable to God or this community, stop for a moment and breathe. Don't be fooled. That is not the voice of God. That is some other voice, some other lie or illusion that is telling you to believe that you are not enough as you are. The most foolish thing you could do right now is to go out and try to fix yourself up in order to be acceptable for God. Don't pull back in those moments. Lean in, even if you're in the dark. Cozy up to someone who has a light and wait with them until the light of Christ comes close enough to you to illumine your way. And then, of course, if you are one of the ones who has a bright light shining right now, great! We need you, and God is ready and waiting to use you. Invite others into your light. Let them sit with you, walk with them, tell them they are enough. Remind them that Jesus is not only coming, but Jesus is here, both in your light that's shining brightly and in their flickering flame too. Because remember, all the oil that makes these flames burn, it's all from God anyway. It's not our personal oil, as if we did something right to get more than another person. Countercultural as it may be, Christian community is not about self-reliance. It's about relying on God and relying on each other. Faith is not a solo sport. So friends, I ask us today, can we simply be present to the God that is here with us now, calling us to look, come, and meet, to meet the Christ that is alive and at work in the world? Can we take stock of the resources we do have, rather than focusing on what we do not, and trust that who we are today is enough to meet and follow the Christ who leads us into tomorrow? Perhaps it takes the most heart of all. Remember, the root word of courage is heart. The most courage to believe that God can use us just as we are. Don't be fooled by the voices that say we need more. Trust yourself. Trust this moment. Trust God. And listen to that voice that calls out in the night. Have faith in that voice that simply says, "Look, there he is. Come, you're invited." Meet him in his work in the world. You're needed just as you are. Amen.